Hello friends, welcome to this reading of Dribbling Drew from David Walliams' The World's Worst Children, the first book. And today I'm going to be reading Dribbling Drew to you just for your enjoyment. But what I would just like to say before we get started is that as a teacher, I cannot help myself. I have to put together some lessons around some of the language in this story, some synonyms, some alliteration. Great content here for a lesson to help to teach you to improve your own writing. Those lessons are linked down in the description. So all we're going to do right now is just read and enjoy the story. But if you would like to improve your English writing with those lessons, please click down into the description box and check them out. Okay, let's read Dribbling Drew. The World's Worst Children by David Walliams. Dribbling Drew. Here we have a picture of Drew and a picture of his dribble of drool, a pool of his drool, and damp shoes and socks from the pool of drool. Dribbling Drew. Once upon a time, there was a boy named Drew. Drew dribbled a lot. This wasn't just normal everyday dribbling, the odd globule of gob gloop running down your chin. Oh no, this was dribbling on an industrial scale. Here was a boy who could dribble litre upon litre of dribble a day. Now you may be wondering why Dribbling Drew dribbled so much. Well, it was because he was an incredibly lazy individual. If he could, he would sleep 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And as Drew snoozed, he drooled. Zzz, plop, zzz, plop, went the drool as it landed on the floor. On school mornings, the boy would have to be dragged out of bed by his feet. If he had his way, Drew would be wheeled to school every morning in his bed. And as soon as he arrived, he would go straight back to sleep. Zzz, plop, zzz, plop. Drew liked nothing more than having a nice long snooze during his lessons. He had even been known to take a sleeping bag to school. That way he could doze through every single subject. PE was a hard one to sleep through, but Drew found a way. For example, during football matches, he would ask to be in goal and then climb up on the net and have a nap. If any of the kids scored a goal, he would moan if they celebrated too loudly and woke him up. Because Drew slept through every lesson, he always found himself at the bottom of the class. When Drew snoozed in lessons, he would dribble all over his desk. Zzz, plop, zzz, plop, zzz, plop. The dribble would trickle down to the floor, where a large puddle of drool would collect. If the lesson was dreaded double history, the dribble would end up as something of a pool. No one knew quite what was in Drew's dribble. It was transparent like water, but thick and sticky like glue. One time, his history teacher, Miss Past, ran over to Drew's desk to shout at him for falling asleep in class again. The unfortunate lady slipped on the dribble, shot across the floor, and flew straight out the window. She was found upside down in a nearby hedgerow, with her tweed skirt over her head, her big frilly knickers flapping in the wind. The day our story starts, there was a school trip to the Natural History Museum. This was a wondrous place full of all sorts of treasures, from moon rock to dinosaur skeletons. The museum even housed a life-size cast of a blue whale. As Drew's class pulled up outside the museum in the school coach, Mr. Nummings, the science teacher, handed out his dreaded worksheets. Now listen carefully, children. On these worksheets, I want you to make a list of all the exhibits you see in the museum today. Do we have to, sir? Moaned Dribbling Drew, stifling a yawn. Dozing on the coach for an hour had tired the boy out, and now he was ready for bed. A pool of drool had collected at his feet. Yes, Drew, we have to, yelled the teacher. And I want you to stay awake during this visit. Mr. Nummings turned back to the rest of the class. Now, everyone, the pupil who writes down the most exhibits will come top of the class. So keep looking and listening the whole time. Right, out you get. As they walked in through the museum's giant wooden doors, all the children marveled at the huge skeleton of a diplodocus, which took pride of place in the great hall. But Drew simply yawned. Then he broke away from his teacher and classmates and found a nice quiet place to nap. It was on top of a glass case housing a stuffed dodo, a bird that had become extinct centuries before. No one would disturb him up there. Drew climbed up using a stuffed giraffe as a ladder. He lay down and closed his eyes. Then the boy slept and slept and slept and dribbled and dribbled and dribbled. The boy could sleep absolutely anywhere, standing up during a rock concert, hanging upside down from a tree, even on a roller coaster as everyone around him screamed. This particular day, Drew slept for so long that he was still asleep when the Natural History Museum was locked up for the night. Without anyone realizing, he was still there when all the lights were turned off. All night, Drew slept, and as he slept, he dribbled. Zzz, plop, zzz, plop, zzz, plop. Drew dribbled and dribbled and dribbled. Then he dribbled some more. The spot of drool beneath him spread into a puddle. Soon it was a lake of spittle. By dawn, Drew's sea of dribble had filled the entire Natural History Museum. In the morning, Winston, the burly security guard, arrived bright and early to unlock the doors and open the museum as he did every day. However, this was no ordinary day. The first thing Winston noticed was a transparent fluid oozing underneath the doors. That's very strange, he thought out loud. Maybe one of the daft old professors has left a tap running. Next, the security guard dipped the toe of his boot into the liquid and realized it couldn't be water from a leaky pipe. Whatever this was, it was thick and sticky. Worried that the museum might have been flooded, Winston flung open the giant wooden doors as fast as he could. Nothing could have prepared Winston for what happened next. Whoosh! A tidal wave of drool washed him clean off his feet, and he found himself traveling at speed down the street. Wah! The big man screamed like a baby. Closely behind the security guard floated some of the biggest exhibits from the museum: a stuffed polar bear, the life-size cast of the blue whale, even the diplodocus skeleton. They all bobbed along the streets of London on this rushing river of dribble. Atop the glass case that housed the dodo was Drew. In all the commotion, he had finally woken up from his long sleep. As he floated down the road, the flood of his own spittle destroyed everything in its path. Cars, lorries, and even buses were swept off the ground and began bobbing along on the colossal ooze of drool. Drew leapt off the glass case onto the roof of a nearby building. From that safe place, he watched more of the exhibits from the museum pass by. Giant birds' eggs, a stuffed gorilla, a model of an elephant. The boy reached into his blazer pocket. He still had the worksheet his teacher, Mr. Nummings, had given him at the start of the school trip. Drew made a note of everything he saw. Every single exhibit from the museum floated past, and he wrote them all down. Mars Rock, a Neanderthal skull, a marble statue of Charles Darwin, a giant squid, a stuffed vulture, an earthquake machine, a model T-Rex. The list went on and on. A seahorse pickled in a jar, a model volcano, a fossil of a prehistoric fish, a spacesuit, a stuffed giraffe, an old lady clinging onto her shopper, Hang on, that's a real old lady. A model of a woolly mammoth. To his credit, Dribbling Drew spent hours listing everything he saw as the gushing river of drool swept all the museum's precious exhibits out to sea. The next day in class, Drew proudly handed in his worksheet to Mr. Nummings. Aside from a few spots of dribble, it was perfect. After looking through all his pupils' work, the science teacher announced the results. I can reveal the winner with 100% is Drew, said Mr. Nummings. The boy was top of the class for the very first time in his life, before he was promptly expelled. As a punishment for destroying everything in the Natural History Museum, Drew was put to work there. His job was to reassemble the Diplodocus skeleton that had been recovered from the bottom of the sea. He was not to stop until the giant jigsaw was finished. Dribbling Drew didn't get any sleep for the next 10 years. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that story as much as I did. So we are going to be building our vocabulary. So one of the ways that we can improve our writing skills is by using lots of synonyms and showing the breadth of our vocabulary. And we can't use words that we don't know the meaning of. So we need to learn those words, and then we can use them in our writing and show our teachers and the people who are marking our work what fabulous writers we are because of our fabulous vocabulary. Now, there are quite a few words in that story that I don't think that you will know the meaning of or know what are. And I don't want to go through every single one of them because we will be here all day. So I'm just going to explain a few very quickly, and then we're going to do a little bit of a word study on some specific ones, which I think that will really help to improve your vocabulary. Okay, so coming to page 18. Here it talks about marveling at a huge skeleton of a Diplodocus, and he climbed on top of a glass case housing a stuffed dodo. So I thought you might not know what those two things are. So this is a dodo. It's a prehistoric bird which is now extinct. And there's I think it's a phone company that is called Dodo. So you might have seen like this picture. And then a Diplodocus is a kind of long-necked dinosaur. The other part of the story that I thought that you might not be familiar with was this page here. And this is particularly for my Australian viewers. This is David Walliams is a British author. So in that country, there are things that are specific. There is specific language for a country. So, for example, later on, he talks about a lorry, which we would call a truck. He talks about them getting off a coach, which is what we would call a bus. So here she slips and shoots out the window into a hedgerow, her tweed skirt over her head, her big frilly knickers flapping in the wind. So this is a hedgerow. It is a row of hedges. Hedges are bushes. So it's just like a fence that's made out of bushes. These are frilly knickers. And this is the kind of old-fashioned frilly knickers that David Walliams is talking about. If we go back and have a look at the original picture, you can see down here, it's this kind that go all the way down to their knees. And that's a very old-fashioned kind of knickers, but it's sort of part of the joke. And tweed, so she was wearing a tweed skirt. Tweed is a kind of fabric. It's very thick and warm. We don't tend to wear it here very much in Australia because it's not a very warm, it's not a very cold country, so we don't need clothing this warm. But what David Walliams is alluding to is that this idea that a boring teacher dresses boringly. Not that that's a word. So Miss Past, the history teacher, is a boring teacher in which her lessons are so boring he falls asleep. So she dresses in a boring way because she's a boring teacher, and boring teachers wear tweed, basically, is what that's saying. Okay, let's have a chat about some of the vocabulary that I'd like to use today. So we're going to do spittle, globule, dreaded, and colossal. And spittle and globule are sort of the same thing. And then we'll do colossal and dreaded. So you might have sat in an English class, in a grammar class, and your teachers asked you to come up with a list of synonyms. So synonyms are words that have the same meaning as each other. So you might have been asked to come up with synonyms for the word cold. Other words for cold would be icy, cool, chilly. And you might sit there and think, why am I doing this? Like, yeah, it's important to know there are these other words that mean the same thing, but how can I use it purposefully? Well, cold is a boring word. We use cold all the time. So when we are showing the breadth of our vocabulary, we don't want to write, it was a cold night. We want to say it was a chilly night. It was a freezing night, because that's a better word than a boring word like cold. So we want to use our synonyms to create interesting vocabulary, so we want to use our synonyms use the breadth of our vocabulary to create interesting sentences and therefore interesting stories. So in this story, David Walliams uses the word dribble a lot because he's dribbling Drew. But if David Walliams just said dribble, 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 dribble all the time, it would start to get a little bit boring and annoying. It's like, yeah, we get it, he's dribbling. So he has to change up the vocabulary so that he's got other ways of being able to say the same thing without it getting boring all the time. And this is where he's bringing in words like drool, globule, and spittle. They all sort of mean the same thing. So if we have a look at some definitions, we've got drool, which is to let saliva or some other substance flow from the mouth. Globule, a tiny globe or ball, especially of liquid. And spittle, a clear liquid secreted into the mouth by the salivary glands and mucous glands of the mouth. Basically, it means spit, saliva or spit. So they're all synonyms of each other. They all can be used in place of drool or dribble. So it's good that we know this, but it's better if we have a practice of using this vocabulary in our sentences, because it helps to sort of stick it in our mind. And that way, when you're actually writing, particularly in a test and you're feeling a little bit stressed, it's easier for those words to come forward. So I would like you to get a piece of paper from your writing book or a Word document or whatever it is that you would like to write or type into. Our title is Dribbling Drew. It's a title, so it needs to have both words capitalized. It's a proper name. And then underneath that, I would like you to write the words spittle, globule, and drool. And we're going to give it the definition that it is, actually, we could probably add in dribble there as well, that it's all saliva dripping from the mouth. So that's our definition. So I would like you to pause the video and just get that far. Okay, now let's have a practice of using those words. So the main words that I would like you to have a practice with are spittle and globule. If you would like to also use drool and dribble, you can, but I don't want you to be here all day writing about spit. Okay, and you'll notice that it's spittle, which will be the root word of the word spit. So in the original story, it said Drew dribbled and dribbled and dribbled. Then he dribbled some more. The spot of drool beneath him spread into a puddle. Soon it was a lake of spittle. So we can say Drew produced a lake of spittle. That's what was in the original story. So how could we write a sentence that has the word spittle in it? As the old man ate his donuts, spittle flew from the side of his mouth. So have a think how you could put saliva into a sentence or spit into a sentence and then build it around that using the word spittle. My mum was so angry at me for not cleaning up my room that spittle flew from her mouth as she yelled. Okay. All right, so stop the video and have a go at using the word spittle in a sentence. Okay, so the other word that I would like to use is globule. So a globule is, if you see the root word there, globe, so it's like a ball of spit rather, or a ball of liquid, rather than being directly meaning the word spit. So we need to imagine a sentence where we've got a ball of spit. If we go back to the original story, on the first page, it said, this wasn't just normal everyday dribbling. The odd globule of gloop, running down your chin. So gob as in your mouth, gloop as in like slime. So a ball of mouth slime running down your chin. Globule of goop. Drew had a globule of gloop running down his chin. Right, the globule of dribble trickled from the happy baby's mouth. So you're thinking about the word ball. I laughed so hard that a globule of spit flew from my mouth. Okay, pause the video there and have a go with the word globule. Okay, that brings me to the end of our sort of disgusting lesson, talking lots about spit and drool and dribble, but it was sort of lots of fun as well. Okay, please check out the description for the other lesson that I've got for Dribbling Drew. It's a lesson on alliteration, which is another great way to improve your writing. Please also like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. It really helps me out to be able to keep creating these videos so you guys can keep on learning. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you with the next lesson.